Hello, students. Very good afternoon. So we'll be starting the session at 3:30. We still have 6 more minutes. In the meantime, please to inform your friends, ask them to join the session as soon as possible. Right, today's topic is going to be object-oriented programming concepts. In the last class, we had discussed about classes and object. Today, we'll move with the other concepts related to OOPS, which majorly includes inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and encapsulation. Hello, students. We are still waiting for a few more students to join the session. It is highly requested. Please inform your friends. Ask them to join the session. You can drop a text in the WhatsApp group. That would be really helpful. Let student know that the session has been started and they should join. We'll wait for, let's say, a couple of more minutes and then we'll start with the available students. All right, so let's start. Right. So far, we have discussed like what is object-oriented programming. We have seen the concepts, the characteristics of object-oriented programming, right? Which includes classes, objects, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, encapsulation, right? These are the six properties which are usually associated with object-oriented programming. Now, there are various languages which follow this programming pattern. When it comes to Java, Java has this possibility of development in both procedural oriented way as well as object oriented way. This is one of the reason, whereas for many beginners, procedure oriented seems easy. But someone who's into very much into development or who's developing some extensive software, they wouldn't understand the importance of object-oriented programming. And Java offers both the facilities. In our last session, we had seen how Java, sorry, how Python, basically Python allows you to develop in procedural oriented way as well as object oriented way. When it comes to Java, Java is strictly an object oriented programming, right? Now, what is the difference between procedural and object oriented language? So in the case of procedure, we are more focused on what to do. In the case of object, we are more focused on who is doing it, right? And when it comes to real life, Whenever we go with a story, we usually start a story with a character, and then we start building story around the character. The same thing is offered in the case of object oriented. We start with a particular object. We want to provide certain properties to this object. We create a class. So class is basically a collection of all the properties which an object would get. So if I want to start with a character, I would first start building a class. I would define the properties, and then I'll make an object of this class. This is the reason why object is called as a real-time entity, whereas class is called as the blueprint of object, right? So in our last class, we had seen how to create classes. We have seen how to create an object. This was the last program which we had seen. We had created one class. We had defined some of the variables and some of the methods. Then we created an object of this class. And in that particular class, sorry, with this particular object, we access these methods. We also understood with this example that an object of a different class cannot access the methods, or let's go with class members of a different class, right? This was something which we discussed in our previous session. Now, any question from here? Any doubt, any question from the topics which we covered in the last session? Nothing? Well, I'm simply assuming that since we had kept first 10 minutes for doubt clearing session and there were no question during that particular time, I'm assuming there are no question related to these initial concepts, right? Then what's next? Now we will move on to some of the other interesting properties of object-oriented programming, which are inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, and abstraction. Right. Now, when it comes to different programming language, the idea could be different. The implementation technique could be different. But basically, all these things are actually the same. When it comes to inheritance, basically we create a class, we define certain properties. And let's assume you want to use these properties in some other class, or you want to create another class which should have all these properties without writing anything, without writing, defining all these uh, pieces of codes once again. There you can use the concept of inheritance, right? Now, if I go with an example, first we will create one class and we'll call this as base class or the parent class. And then we will create a child class, or also known as the derived class, right? And we'll see how the properties defined in our parent class are being inherited in the child classes, right? Now for this, we can go with any sort of example. If you have any particular thing in mind, like if you want an example of a particular type, let's say an employee or a student, you can say that. And if no, then I'll go with any of the example. Any particular thing that you want me to go with that particular example. If yes, please do write in the chat. No? Okay, I'll do one thing. I'll create one class. Let's call this class as a person class, right? Since all the students are actually a person. And then we'll create another class calling as student class. We will define certain things in person. And since student is a type of person, we will include all these properties of person in our student class. Sounds good and doable too. Let's do this. So for this, if you want to start from the scratch, what would be the first thing that you would do? Any idea? First, you would go with the parent class. Now, what I'll be doing, I'll be calling this one as person dot py, right? Let's define our person class. Person. Now, you may have certain things in mind. If yes, do let me know. And I see my Visual Studio Code automatically completes the code because it's been constantly monitoring me. So I've been using this example in my previous classes as well. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to write it once again. So, right. First, let's define the init, right? When you go with init, what is the first thing you define with the keyword self? And let's say every person would have a name and age. Let's do that. Name and age, right? If I want to use this information, let's say self dot name equals to name, and pretty much like this, self dot age equals to age. Yeah, looks good. And let's define a function. Let's call this as display. So def self, in order to keep something different, let's say, mm, sorry, why am I writing self? I should write display. Display and info, right? Use the keyword self. And let's say I'll go with a print statement which says name equals to this and age equals to this. And since I'll be using the variables, I would need to use F for formatting options. So name, then self dot name, right? And let's say I'll keep it simple. I'll just write age colon self age, right? That's it. Let's save this and run this. Now, in order to run this code, I'll just simply click on this. Nothing would be printed since we have not actually used these defined methods. We have simply created it and interpreted it, right? All right. Now let's create another class and let's call this class as student. So student dot py. Now, since we want student to inherit the properties of person plus some other information, we are going to include these both the information. So first, let's define a simple class student, right? And let's say I would need to define some information about student. So let these variables be defined in my init. First, keyword self. What else would you need? You would need a name. You would need age. What is what else does a student have? Student would have a roll number, right? And let's say branch, right? And let's define self dot name equals to name. Pretty much like this, I would use self dot age equals to age. But I hope you remember this. We have already defined how to assign name and age in our parent class. So if I want to use the concept, I don't have to write it once again. I'll simply include parent class here, which in my case is person. And there, instead of writing self name and all these things, I'm going to go and use the init method defined here. So for that, self underscore, instead of writing self, I need to use the classes, the properties defined in the parent class. So I'll use the keyword super. Super basically uh, tries to connect to the parent class, right? As in this keyword goes to the current class, super goes to the parent class. So super dot init, right? And what do we want from a parent class? The properties of name and age. Let's go like this, right? Now, since in my super class, in my parent class, these informations are already there. So name and age will automatically be allocated as it was allocated in person class. Then roll number and branch, I have updated them here, right? Let's go and define another function and let this be display. Hmm, let me just see what was the name here, display info. So I'll just call it a display student info. Use a keyword self, right? And since I'll be using some of the information displayed in parent class plus some of the information displayed in student class. So let's use both the facilities. So self dot display, uh, that was info, right? Display info. And let's say for student class, I'll go with roll number equals to this, branch equals to that, like this, right? Save it, run it. Person is not defined. It's in the same class person, class person. Mm, I could define all these things in a in a single file. That could be one of the solution. I just have to check what is the environment, uh, and which version am I using. This could be version dependent. 3.10. Mm, person is not defined. It is problem. Could use Codium to explain this. I'll just make it simple. It will give me a bunch of names from, and I've not done this. So I'll just go use the same example. Once we go with encapsulation, as of now, I'll just do something simple. I'll copy this, put this in this person class. Now, how I could write this in a different class, this is something which I may need to explain a bit later once we complete encapsulation. This was well, yes. Now, if I want to create an object of student, so let me go and write student. Since this is an object, I'll go with a smaller name. Student1 equals to student. And what do we call it? The student. Let's go and use some of the name of the students. So let this be Arnav. Arnav, what's your age? Arnav Lahane. What's your age? You're there? I'll just assume that this person is 20 years old. So I'll give the age 20, right? And then roll number, let's say this roll number be 101. And let's say branch be CSE, right? Now I'm going to go with this method, display student info, to display all the things. Let's go and run this. I'll just clear this part. Student info. That's interesting. Student one. Save it. Run it. Yeah, this works fine. Might be some error. I might have clicked somewhere else. Nothing fancy. Just a small error of using an ID. That's it. So this prints name Arnav, age 20, roll number 101, and branch CSC. Right. So this is just an example how you can define something in a parent class, or as we call as a base class. And you can define certain things in your student class or your child class. And when you're planning to use the properties in your parent class, quite easy. You simply have to import the parent class and then use Hooper keyword to access the initialization method defined in the parent class. Right. So in that way, I don't have to define the storage possibilities of name and age. This is just two variables, so it might seem easy to you, but this is really useful when you have tons of information. Right. For example, let's talk about the college admissions. While coming for admission, the counseling cell already collects all this information. And then when you go for the enrollment, you might need to fill up different sort of forms. And in these forms, certain informations are being required to fill by you because they might change at the time of admission. So they require the latest entries. But certain information they do collect from the counseling form itself. This is the same thing. When I'm using this, I'm collecting these information from my counseling form. When I'm asking you to define these new details, this is something which you are doing in the admission form, which has the latest information. Understood? Any doubt, any question in this? Any doubt, any question? So this is just an example how you can achieve inheritance, right? Think about it. Any question? Any question, please to ask. See, when you are using one base class and one child class, one derived class, one base, one derived, and you're using the properties of parent in derived class, this is called a single inheritance, right? There are other types of inheritance as well. So let's say when you are using um, properties of more than one class in your derived class, then this is called as multiple inheritance, right? For example, a child may inherit properties from mother and father. So I could go and define these two classes, mother and father, right? And then I can use a child class where Where I'm defining just a single class, I could define more than one classes, right? This is multiple inheritance. Then we have multi-level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance is pretty much like, let's say, grandparent, then parent, then child. So property is in child if it is inheriting the properties of parent, which inherits the properties of grandparent. Child automatically gets all the properties of grandparent as well as parent, right? If you're going with hierarchical where you have single base class and multiple child classes, you could this would be an example of hierarchical inheritance. And when you're mixing things up using, let's say, multi-level with the hierarchical, then this becomes a sort of hybrid inheritance, right? Now, any question in this? As I said yesterday, all the discussion would entirely be depending on the responses I get from you. Any question? And if it is something which you already know, then no point of uh, discussing this. I mean, we have a lot of topics which would require a lot of interaction. So if this is something which you already understood, give me some thumbs up. You would find thumbs up option in the React under React button icon. Click on React, there you would see thumbs up. Give me some thumbs up. And if there is a question, please unmute or write in the chat. I'll take a pause here, expecting to get a response. Anyone? Any doubt? Anything at all? No? All right. So in that case, I'll move on to the next concept. So after inheritance, one should look into polymorphism, right? When it comes to polymorphism, uh, as discussed yesterday, poly means multiple, morph means form. So polymorphism basically means multiple form, right? There are several ways to achieve polymorphism in Python. This includes I mean, when it comes to polymorphism, first of all, there are four possibilities. Uh, One could call it duck typing. Not a very famous name, but yeah, people do use this. Then there is operator overloading, method overloading, and method overriding. Right. Uh, Basically, when it comes to duck typing, it's more like you define two classes. I'll just go with the classic example. Right. Let me just write another program. I'll call this one as, let's say, 8.py. Right. This is just a classic example of, oh God, what happened? This is readable. So I'll go with the classic example of duck typing. Right. I'll simply define one class. Let's call this as duck. Right. Let me define something. Let's say, yeah, quack. Let's go and define another class. Let's call this class as dog. This says woof. Right. Then let me go. I mean, I could go and define different sort of classes, but I'll just go with simple. Let's say animal sound, right? And instead of defining any sort of classes, I'll just go and use this animal. So this means here, in the case of calling this, in the case of arguments, I would pass on some sort of animal, assuming that duck and dog both are animal, right? So your define animal. Guess what's a common name? Common name for duck as well as dog. Dog. Uh, Sound something which we have. Let's go with speak. Right. And I'm going to define these two. Duck equals to duck, created an object, and dog equals to dog, created another object. Let's go and use animal duck now, animal sound now. Here I will pass on duck and see what happens. Save it, run it, animal sound, animal speak. For certain reason, my compiler is giving me headache. So interpreter is giving headache. Animal speak, not defined. Where is animal speak? Okay, I have defined my duck. I've used this. I have created dog. I had gone up here, right? So animal what is this? What is this? Animal speak not defined. Animal sound. Oh. I've written sound there, speak there. That should do it. Let's clear this and run it now. Missing one positional argument. Animal. Animal dot work. Let me do one thing. I'll just make it same sound. This to sound, and then I can call it sound. So I'm gonna do this. animal sound, I'll pass on a different type of object. So dog this is, and just save it, run it. This goes quack and woof, right? This is more like a type of method overriding. What case happens in the case of method overriding? Uh, this could be extended. I may create a type class animal and there I define sound, and I could use this animal dot sound up there. Totally up to me if I want to go with this. This particular example is called as duck typing because this examples the where this was majorly defined at the first time, it had this example duck, right? So we have these two classes, and in both these classes, we have this sound method defined, and we are now creating a different type of function. And in this function, I'm passing a type of animal, right? And since duck and dog, these are an object, basically I am passing up an object, right? So this animal is replaced by that object, and this method has been accessed, right? This is called as the duck typing examples of polymorphism, right? Now there are other possibilities also. If you are from if you already have the learnings of C++ or Java, you might have heard about method overloading. But uh, when it comes to Python, method overloading is not supported by default. Now, people would argue, if you are in an interview and somebody asks you, what are the possibilities of achieving method overloading in Java? Then you could go give them this answer that method overloading is not available by default, but you can use the similar concept by defaulting parameters of variable length arguments, where you can, um, let's say, if you want to add two numbers, you can define one method. If you want to add three methods, what you would do, you would define two methods and keep the third variable as with some default value. That's a zero. So
मैं नहीं हूँ उसमें उसमें तो 6 लोग हैं ना लोगों में एक ये तो बढ़ गया तो तू क्यों नहीं ये है ना भाई
Pratham, I think accidentally clicked on unmute. I'll just mute him. All right. So this is in that way you can achieve method overloading. If you want to see an example, let me create another program of that. Program 9.py. Right. I'll just create one class calculator. Right. And there I define this sum. And in this sum, I'll go define self A, comma B. Let's say I want to keep the definition simple till C. But I want to have this option of using it for three variables as well. So I'll go and write C. I'll give a default value to this, right? Similar to this, I could go for D, for E, for F, and everything, right? And then I'll return A plus B plus C plus D, right? So the user would automatically be expected to provide two values. If user provides three value, then also this would work. If user provides four value, this would also work. So you can define n number of variables and it would work for them absolutely fine. Let's see this in action. So I'll first create an object. Let's say cal equals to a calculator type, right? And let's see this. So we have two values, we have three values, we have four values. Let's close this, right? And let's use this. So you can see it is giving me output for two values, for three values, for four values. I'm using the same function, same method. So this could be considered as an example of method overloading where I'm using different arguments in the same variable with two value, with three value, with four value, right? By default, method overloading is not supported in Python, but this is a way where by which you can get this possibility, right? Similar to this, let's say program 10 dot Python. We have seen the example of duck typing, right? I'm going to go and use the same code for my method overriding. So I'll go make class animal, and in this class animal, I'll define one sound, right? And let this be printing some default value. Let's say print, why not generic anemic sound, right? Let's click it out. And then I'll go and derive this class in my duck, in my dog, right? Duck and dog. And in this, I also have this self print is this, right? And instead of using this, I'll just delete this. And I'll delete these parts as well. Now what I'll do, I'll create an object of animal class, right? And then I go with animal dot sound. If I run this will use the definition defined in my animal class, right? Save, run. So it prints generic animal sound. But if I use the object of duck or object of dog, it's going to print their respective sound. So this is method overriding, right? I'll just go with one of the example, duck dot duck, duck dot sound, right? So this one prints generic animal sound, this, and since duck is an object of duck and it has a definition sound, it's going to go with this definition defined in that class, right? So I don't have to remember whether what's the sound of which animal. For all these animals, this is going to be exactly the same. I'm going to use the same method, right? So this is an example of method overriding. Now, any question from here? Any doubt at all? Method overriding, any doubt? Method overriding, method overloading, or duck typing? Any doubt at all? Anything at all? No doubt, no question? Nothing? All right. So what next? We have seen inheritance, we have seen polymorphism. Then we can go with abstraction or encapsulation. Right. First, let's say we go with abstraction. Right. Now, in the case of abstraction, what basically happens, abstraction is basically the process of hiding data. Right. When you have some complex information and you want to keep that information hidden from the end user or from the other modules, if you want to limit their visibility, there you can use these abstract methods. Right. Similar to this, if you want to ensure that um, a certain information will be defined once again in all the subsequent classes, in all the deriving classes, you could use the concept of abstraction. There is this possibility of creating abstract method, right? So we can create abstract methods, and then all the classes inheriting this are going to go and use this, right? Now, the thing with abstraction is Python provides a module called ABC. I'll just show you. I think things are better understood if we are writing code about it. So I'll just go and define some basic classes. Let's say class, what do we call it? Shape, right? And let's define something. mm, every shape would have area. So let's define area, right? Self, right? And let's say you don't want to provide any definitions since you're planning to make it an abstract method. The idea is all the classes which would be inheriting the shape class, they would have to mandatorily define this area method. So I'll use this pass. But like other programming language, you don't have to use a particular type of keyword to make this an abstract method. You can simply use this annotation abstract, right? Now, if I go and use this abstract method, you can see I'm getting this some sort of error that abstract method is not defined. You want to remove this error? As I said, in the case of abstraction in Python, you have to import a method called ABC with capital ABC. Full form is abstract base classes. Right. You want to go there, use this. So they are defined in a module called ABC with the same form, but in small letters. There, go and use ABC. Right. This is abstract base classes. Then let's say you want to go with abstract base method, you can use it. With this, you can also make a class as an abstract class. Just simply inherit ABC. Now this class is an abstract class, right? And in this, we have an abstract method called area. Now, let's say uh, we want to define some sort of shapes. Let's say rectangle. So rectangle, let's go and use the shape, right? And yeah, why not? Let's have the length and width. And now we have this area defined here. What if we don't define this? If I make this as comment, if I run this, I would get an error. Oh, that's not the error which I was expecting. Rather, yeah. So this is something where you need to define this area, right? Now, what is the benefit of making a method as abstract? I wasn't getting any sort of error without the definition of this area, nor do I get the error if I go and use it, right? Any idea? Anything at all? See, if you would remember abstract method do not create have any sort of definition, right? And the classes which would be inheriting this class would need to mandatorily define these abstract methods, right? Then, um, even if I don't define it, then what is the point of creating these abstract methods? Anyone? Anyone? You can unmute and give me your answer. I'll just cut this. If I run this, this is absolutely not doing anything, right? Working just fine. If I make this a comment, then also I'm not getting any sort of error. Come on, I'm expecting at least a few answers about this. In fact, I would also welcome an incorrect answer. Anything? If I go and remove this, save this, and if I run this, absolutely no error. What's the point of defining area as abstract method if you're not getting any sort of error? Come on, let me have some answer. Guys, this won't work. If you're not giving me any response, um, I cannot go like this. If you want, I can assign you some assignments which you have to do within the class. That could be one of the possibilities. I could ask you to submit the daily assignments to fulfill your attendance. That's also a second possibility. But setting blanks, setting ducks in the class, that's something it's unacceptable. Students, please. If you know these parts, let me know. If you don't know these parts, then also inform me. Anything. All right, a quick check. How many of you are there in the session? Raise your hand. How many of the students are attending the session right now? Raise your hand. Keep your hand up. Let me see the final count. I see only 22 names, 22, 25. There are over 140 students in the class. 25 students responded. 27 now. Should I ask every one of you to keep your camera on so I can see my class, can understand the expression of my students? If Prajakta ma'am can help me here. Prajakta ma'am, this is preposterous. All right, everyone, lower your hand. Everyone, lower your hand. All right. So this is basically the abstraction, right? Next, let's look into encapsulation. So when it comes to encapsulation, the basic idea is that you have different uh, properties lying here and there. If there happens to be a way so that you can make them into a single bounded bundle. Let's call this a bundle. If you can bound them by a bundle, then whenever you're planning to use them in future, you could use this bundle together. For example, using these different definitions of functions like sum, subtract, multiplication, division, all these arithmetic operators. Let's say if you have defined all these arithmetic operations and you're planning to use these operations. So it is easier if you bind them with a class. So in future, if you are planning to use this, you can simply include this class. But in the case of using these defined in these definitions, you may need to have some sort of boundaries. Like this should be available everywhere. This should be available to a limited space, right? This can be achieved by using access modifier. When it comes to Python, we have public, protected, and private access modifier, right? Public members are accessible outside the class. The mama name of public, this is something which you need to take care, as in whenever you are defining any public member, The name should not be start with an underscore. Whereas protected member, they are can only be accessible within the class and to subclasses. Now, how would you differentiate whether if a certain variable is public or private? So as I said, public members, I just won't call them methods. Public method, their names never start with an underscore. If it starts with a single underscore, then this means they are protected. You have to define them with the keyword protected, but this is more like a nomenclature. If I make something as protected, I simply have to use a single underscore, right? If I'm planning to make it private, private is something which is inaccessible outside the class, and it is basically if you define a method or a variable, or let's call them as member. If you define a class member as a private, they would only be accessible within the class, right? They won't be available outside the class. This is one of the reasons why init is and starts with double underscore because it is a private type of member, right? So if you are planning to define any class member with public, protected, or private, just look into this underscore possibility. If it is starting without an underscore, this is public. If it is starting with a single underscore, this is protected. And if it is defining with a double underscore, then this is private in nature. Understood? So let's say for a student, I want to keep certain things available to everyone. That would be the name and let's say class, right? Other than name and class, let's say I'm storing the mobile number as well. I don't want this mobile number to be available everywhere. So there by defining the variable name with underscores, I can ensure this type of encapsulation, right? Now let's look with one example. And for this example, let's go with an example of a bank where let's say you have some accounts and in that account we provide certain information, right? Some general information like name, uh, then balance, something like this. Should we do it? Now tell me one thing. Should name be public, private, or protected? So name should, I believe name should be public in nature because this will be available from everywhere, right? What about balance? Now balance can definitely not be public. That's for sure. Balance could be protected or private. Now let's understand. If I make balance as private, then balance will not be available outside the class, right? But in my case, what would I need? I might need to use this balance in different other classes as well, right? And if I want to use in these classes, I need to make sure that these classes are related to my original class, my base class. So I'll make this balance as a protected member. So this means any class who is not a subclass of my base class are not going to use this, right? So let's create another program 12.py. Let's make a class. Let's call this class as account, right? Let's define init. Let's initialize some of the values. So first would be the keyword self. Then what do we need? We would name account. So account name would be more like saving account, current account. Let's call this account owner, right? Owner, and let there be a balance, right? This is just a parameter, so I can use balance without underscore. Now, if I want to keep this information secure, self dot owner equals to owner, right? Similar to this, self dot balance equals to balance. Now, if I want to ensure that balance is available only to its current class and its subclasses, I'll make this variable as protected with a single underscore, right? That's it. What else? We would need to have some sort of private member, and for private attribute, let's say I keep transaction history. That should do it. So self dot transaction history. Right. And since this is a transaction history, I'll make this a type of list, right? Now let's define some more operations. So the two obvious operation could be deposit and withdraw, right? So I'll make, okay, let's see at this suggested definition. It says self amount, if amount is greater than zero, then self balance will get added to the amount. Okay, sounds good. And transaction history would get this information deposit, else it would print invalid amount. Yeah. Then I'll make a withdraw self amount if amount is greater than zero and self balance is greater than amount. If amount to be added is greater than zero, okay, something positive, and balance is greater than amount. Self balance is greater than amount, right? This is a withdraw, right? Huh, this should work. Then self dot underscore balance equals to self balance minus amount, right? And we need to append the transaction history as well. So self dot transaction history, and in this transaction history, let's there we had called it deposit this amount. Here we'll call it withdraw this amount, right? Hmm. This also looks good. I'll just make it a little bigger. This is good. This is good. So I have my this, and if this is not right, I could go mm, print something, right? So if amount is this, I'll just make an else statement invalid amount, right? Keeping it same as the deposit, right? What else? What other functions would I need? Probably I would need a function to show the balance, and I would need to show the function which shows what are the transactions made on this. So let's go and define them. Define show balance, right? And this would be a self type. Then what else? Print balance, self balance, and that's good. And define show transaction history, self transaction history. Same thing for transaction and transaction history, print transaction. Yes, this also seems comfortably easy. Now, if I'm planning to use it, I could make an account. So, what are the information? Owner and balance. This is something which I need to provide. So, account. Let this account be called as Mayak. And I'm depositing, let's say, 5,000. Right. Then what would I need? I need to use these deposit, withdraw, and all these things, right? So I'll first use deposit. How much? I've already deposited 5,000. Let's make it 1,000. Right. Now let's say I go with withdraw. I'll withdraw, let's say 500. Sounds reasonable. Right. And then I go and use this show balance. Right. Now remember, this deposit, this is a public method. Right. Similar to this, withdraw, this is also public method. Show balance, this is also a public method. That's why it does not start with an underscore. Right? If I want to make it public, if I want to make it protector or private, I would start with underscore. One underscore for protected, two underscore for private. And since we would be using these information, depending on your usage, you can make it protected or private, right? Now, what if I want to access this? So let's say dot, what was the show balance? Now, let's go and use this balance. And since I'm printing this, let me go print account balance like this. Similar to this, if I'm printing account history, I could go print account show transaction history, right? This is also show transaction history. What was the name? Show transaction history. Yes, and show balance. Acha, chalo, theek hai, I'll go with this. If I go and use this, show transaction history not defined, show transaction history, self. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Let me just confirm everything seems right. Everything seems right. If I augment this and if I run this, this works exactly the same. If I uncomment this and I print this, then it says, did you mean account transaction history? No, I exactly mean this. Show transaction history. See, this is not doable. Right? Now, how I can see this, how I can access this? Any idea? If I want to see transaction history, what would be my obvious choice? I have this show transaction history, right? Now, one thing, see this transaction history. Let's go and use this. Instead of show transaction history, what if I use this? right? It gives me an error, right? It's keep on telling me that I might be looking for something else. This is something which is not accessible. But if I want to see transaction history, what should be my obvious choice? What should I do? If I want to see transaction history, what should I do? Already have this show transaction history. If I try to access it, it's giving me the error. Let's make this a tab of method. This is giving me the error. Any idea? See, this is account class. This is a method within this account class, right? Any idea? I'm trying to access. Yeah, I think there is an answer.
uh,
Yes,
protected or public method in the class itself, and call that private method in the that public or protected method.
yes, that's the way. If you're planning to access any sort of private information, it is suggested to create a method within a class, right? To create a method within a class, use this uh, use this method to access this private information, right? And then since this is a sort of a public method, an object can access it from anywhere. Understood? This is also known as the getter setter method. Usually, when you are creating these, like when you're storing these personal information, we usually store this information instead of directly defining these values. We store these information via some methods. And since these values are generally private in nature, we store this value using these methods defined within the class. Right. So if you are using to store any value, we call this as setter method. If we are trying to access these value, we call this as getter method. So this is the classic example of getter and setter, right? I'll share this code in the WhatsApp chat. So you all can download this and try to resolve this. I'm not giving you any explicit assignment, but try to use the concept of getter setter method. I'm giving you this name, getter setter method. You can search it. You can find the similar concepts in um, other programming languages as well. So if it is difficult for you to look to find a plausible solution in the case of Python, you can look into other languages. The concept is exactly the same, right? Do solve this. Now, this basically ends our object-oriented programming. Now, if you want to have a detailed discussion on these topics or on a particular topic, please do tell me. I would go and discuss that topic in length. If not, then the next topic would be some already available libraries in Python. When it comes to Python, Python has this possibilities of using some predefined libraries. For example, in the case of C, C++, we were using these libraries, stdio or conio or math.h, these type of libraries, right? Similar to this, even in Python, if you want to start from scratch, you could do that. But if you want to save certain time, you can use some pre-built functions, right? Now, these pre-built functions, they are available sometimes in Python, or you could go and use some libraries, import these libraries and use these packages, these libraries to start with these coding. Totally up to you. You have already seen how to start from scratch. Now let's get to the next stage. Use some of these interesting libraries and see what are the possibilities. Right. So this will be the topic for our next class. That's pretty much it for today. Now for all the students, I'm also sharing the attendance form from tech section program. Please to mark your attendance. Right. We already have two attendance form for I believe batch 1 and batch 3. And this one is for tech section program for TSP attendance. All right. Please to mark your attendance in the respective forms. For the students of batch 1, they could go with my form too. Right. I'll share your details with Swati ma'am. So she will mark your attendance. Right. That's pretty much it for today. We'll have a discussion in details about these libraries, these packages, all these amazing things in our next class. Now, as a customary thing, I would request every one of you to switch on your camera so we can have a photograph together. Come on, boys and girls. Hello, Sakshi. Hi,
Hi,
Shaban.
sir.
Hi, sir.
The Minecraft guy, Vijay. Hi, Sumeer. Guys, do mark the attendance है ना उसको नहीं बोलना है. Hi, Krishkant. Hi, Indrajit. चेहरे पे स्माइल आ जाती है ना अपना नाम सुनकर. And सुमेर इतने परेशान क्यों हैं?
Major Parisha.
Sumeir, it looks like you're deep into coding.
No, sir.
Hey, that was a compliment. Whenever somebody gives you compliments, say thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Come on, guys. सभी लोग, come on, do switch on your camera. जब तक हम लोग अपनी फोटोग्राफ ले लेते हैं, जब बहुत सारे आ जाते हैं तो चेहरे दिखने क्लियर नहीं रहते. Everyone, give me a smile. Sakshi is back. Everyone, smile ear to ear. Wonderful. Okay, let's click one more with Arnav. Thank you very much. Now, if you have marked the attendance, in that case, you can leave the session. Right? In case आपको कोई doubt है, कोई question रहता है, I'm here for next couple of more minutes. Right? Thank you, everyone. See you all in the next session. Just make sure that you mark the attendance. Bye bye.